Chapter 220. Li Qingshan touched her cheek and said seriously, "You can't kill people you don't know." After saying this, he felt like his whole person had been sublimated. He felt like he had fulfilled his duty as an educator. "So I am such a kind person." Little and blinked, not knowing if she understood or not. Holy Hall, however, Li Qingshan already had a plan in mind, so he was no longer worried. He walked behind the screen and took off all his clothes, revealing his well-defined, sturdy body that seemed like it had been forged from iron or stone. With a shake of his shoulders, he leapt into the swimming pool-like bath with a plop. The hot water gushed out of the bath and over his chest. Li Qingshan let go of his hair and leaned against the side of the bath comfortably. He took out the jade slip for the Gui water method of condensing qi from his 100 treasures pouch and studied it carefully. The first level was the simplified version of the innate training of qi method. With a glance, he knew it didn't take much effort. But from the second level onwards, it was a bit difficult. He originally thought that he only needed to convert the qi in his body into Gui water qi, but after studying it carefully, he found that it wasn't that simple. It was the same as cultivating the yang-heal meridian, but the requirements weren't as simple as connecting the meridians. The 5 organs corresponded to the 5 elements, and the kidneys controlled water. The Gui water condensing qi method needed to sense the kidneys and absorb the essence of Gui water. But how to sense it and absorb it was a mysterious ancient text. If he didn't have the foundation of the innate training of qi method, he would definitely be at a loss. Although it was a bit better now, he still felt that it was very difficult to understand. Luckily, he bought the version with annotations. The notes of the seniors were much easier to understand, so he could at least feel his way forward. But the content of the handwriting was more than 10 times that of the Gui water condensing qi method. After looking at it for a while, he felt dizzy. He couldn't help but admit that he had nothing to do with talent or intelligence. He submerged his head into the water and floated in the ripples. His mind also calmed down, and a thought occurred to him. His comprehension was not good, but didn't that mean that there was a genius child beside him that even the green bull praised? Li Qingshan said, "Little N, have you finished eating? Come take a bath." From drinking tea to eating, he would never forget her in any kind of comfort. To kid her a little and immediately came in front of him, took off his clothes and jumped into the water. Li Qingshan handed the jade slip to her. "Help me study it." Then, he took out the book that the old man in the bookstore had carefully handed to him. At that time, he had taken it in a hurry, so he didn't even have time to read the title of the book. His heart was filled with anticipation. What exactly was the book that the old man had given him so cautiously? Could it be that it was some kind of special cultivation technique that the other party saw that he was talented enough to shoulder the heavy responsibility of saving the world, so he gave it to him without accepting any spirit stones? The binding of the book was extremely exquisite, and the stitching was meticulously done. It exuded a faint scent of ink, and the paper used was also of the highest quality. When he held it in his hand, he felt that it was a bit heavy. But by the standards of a divine cultivation technique, it was a bit too new. No matter, he had to take a look at the book first. On the bright and clean vermilion cover were the 3 elegant words, accompanying a flower's sleep. It was slightly different from the name of the secret technique that Li Qingshan had imagined. He flipped to the next page and saw the words, Chapter 1, Hua Sanyang mistook her lover. Then, there was a poem that went, "The affairs of the world are never free. 1,000 thoughts of love, a moment of enmity. Lovers, who are willing to die for love. First make enemies, then reunite." What the hell is this? Li Qingshan was startled. The book that the old man had given him so carefully was actually a novel. He didn't believe it, so he patiently read on. Then, it turned out to be a very boring story. If it was just boring, then it wouldn't be a big deal. The more he read, the more he felt that something was wrong. The descriptions of sexual intercourse were very bold. Of course, for a transmigrator like Li Qingshan, the white steamed buns and purple cured meat really didn't have the slightest bit of excitement. But in this era, it should be considered rather out of line. After flipping through a dozen or so pages, almost all of the male characters and all of the female characters had a go, but it didn't make the book any less boring. until he flipped to the 15th page. An exquisitely drawn erotic picture impressively appeared in front of Li Qingshan. This erotic picture, not only were the lines meticulous, even the expressions were vivid. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Li Qingshan felt that the drawing was very good. Then, he didn't have the patience to read it page by page. He casually flipped through the pages, and there were many more erotic pictures like this at the back. Li Qingshan was finally convinced that the book in his hands was indeed an erotic book. But this didn't make sense. That seemingly virtuous and amiable old man was so careful just to give him an erotic book? Even the weakest qi practitioner was a person of high authority among mortals. If he had the time to read this thing, wouldn't it be simpler and more direct to find a famous prostitute in a brothel? Could it be that the old man was a book lover and appreciated some of the cultural connotations in the book, so he wanted to share it with me, but was afraid that I would look down on this book because of that kind of content? This was the only reasonable explanation. But the content of this book was clearly very clumsy and had absolutely no cultural value to speak of. Li Qingshan was confused. He was 10 times more confused than when he was reading the water condensation method. There must be a secret hidden in this matter that he didn't know, but it was deliberately hidden in this kind of trash book. Li Qingshan touched it with his hand. There was no interlayer. He injected true qi. There was no reaction. He shone it against the light. There was no image. He poured water on it. It was wet. Inside and out, he tried all kinds of methods, but this was just an ordinary book. Could it be that there was some kind of code hidden in the content of the book? But even if there was, he didn't have the chance to read it correctly. As the saying goes, if you don't have enough wisdom, look for little n. He glanced at little and saw that she was concentrating on studying the water condensation method. He then looked at the book in his hand. If she found out that he was reading this kind of book, wouldn't it be embarrassing? He immediately dispelled this idea. If it weren't for little and beside him, he would have done the positions in the erotic pictures to see if there was some kind of qi circulation method. What are you looking at? Little and suddenly came over. Her long wet black hair was winding down on her white jade-like shoulders, floating on the water. It looked more like some kind of aquatic plant. Pa Li Qingshan closed the book tightly. He said with an unnatural expression, "Nothing." "Ah, have you finished studying it?" He inexplicably remembered the old man's expression when he gave him the book. Little and curiously looked at the book in Li Qingshan's hand. She had already completely understood the second layer of the water condensation method. Then she taught it to Li Qingshan in words that couldn't be more straightforward. Li Qingshan suddenly felt enlightened. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. He praised, "You're so smart. Why didn't I think of it?" Little N's face was flushed. In the dense water vapor, she vaguely revealed her originally distant beauty. Li Qingshan seemed to suddenly realize the difference between men and women. He smiled and said, "When you grow up, we won't be able to bathe together." Little N raised her head. "Then I will never grow up." "Don't be silly. How can a person never grow up? I'm not a human." Li Qingshan didn't take this childish words to heart. "Well, we are not human. But we still have to grow up." Little and pouted. Li Qingshan said, "But after saying so much, you forgot the most important thing. How to transform the true qi into gui water true qi." Little and said, "Can't you directly absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth?" Li Qingshan scratched his head. "It turns out that I'm really not smart enough." His monster core was of the water element. How he cultivated the monster core? He could cultivate the gui water true qi. He only needed to rely on the infinite heaven and earth. Why should he think about his small self? He wasn't stupid. Rather, he had been conditioned by his habitual thinking and regarded cultivation methods as the golden rule. However, the advice given by the seniors who had written their own notes were all for ordinary qi warriors. They would never have thought that there were qi warriors who could directly absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in this world. Li Qingshan said, "By the way, the uncle who sold the book gave me a book. I think there should be a lot of mystery in it, but I can't understand it." Little and asked curiously, "Is it the one just now? Can't you show it to me?" "Absolutely not." Li Qingshan shook his head. Little and said disappointedly, "Then you can ask him tomorrow." Li Qingshan was stunned again. "It's not like the bookstore can grow legs and run away. I'll just pay another visit tomorrow." Why did I suddenly become stupid today? It must be that reading this stupid book has affected my IQ. Little and hesitated. In the end, he didn't say that he hadn't read the book just now. Li Qingshan said, "By the way, this is for you." He handed the jade scroll called Scripture Pavilion to Little and accepted it with shyness and joy. Li Qingshan took out the Book of All and looked up information about a few spirit herbs according to his memory. As he expected, every spirit herb could be used as medicine. Among them, the most valuable were the flowers in Milliped's cave that could turn into butterflies. They were called blue butterfly flowers, and they were an indispensable main ingredient in refining a precious type of medicinal pill. The name of that precious medicinal pill was True Spirit Pill. Then, Li Qingshan casually looked up the information on True Spirit Pills and suddenly found them to be rather familiar. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Weren't True Spirit Pills the two unknown pills he had obtained from the two grannies in the sect? The effects of the True Spirit Pill were extremely simple. It could convert true qi into spiritual qi. It was a holy item that qi practitioners needed to break through to foundation establishment. The two grannies had carefully stored it away, probably so that they could use it when they reached the peak of qi condensation. However, it had benefited Li Qingshan. It was easy to imagine the value of this spirit herb that Millipede said was not tasty. Unfortunately, the Book of All only briefly introduced the medicinal properties of the True Spirit Pill and how to use it. There was no pill recipe or method of refining it. The truly valuable information would not appear in this kind of common book. Chapter 221. The Arts of the Boundless Ocean. Li Qingshan thought, perhaps it's time to change to a pill cauldron, and pill recipes would be a must. However, his alchemy had only scratched the surface from Qian Rongji, so there was no need for him to be overly hasty. At the very least, he already knew how to use these treasures now. The contents of the Book of All were extremely vast and varied. Just a single piece of information was enough for Li Qingshan to stare at for quite a while, broadening his horizons. However, he also gradually discovered that most of the information recorded in the Book of All did not exceed the boundaries of the Clear River Prefecture. Once he left this range, the information would become extremely simple and general. However, it was already very difficult to record the many matters that spanned 1,500 kilometers in the Clear River Prefecture. Calling it the Book of All was not an exaggeration. The 9 provinces were so vast, spanning who knew how many kilometers. Even the most powerful cultivators could not traverse through it all, so how was it possible for there to actually be a book that covered everything? It was the same principle as mental maps. Even if there really was a book like that, what value would it have to a measly qi practitioner? There were thousands of cultivators, but just how many of them could make it out of the Clear River Prefecture? Just how many of them could make it out of the Rui Commandery? However, Li Qingshan believed there would be a day when he could use these eyes to see everything in the world. Before he knew it, his mind drifted back to the tiny village and recalled that arrogant vow. I want to traverse the 5 lakes and 4 seas, the 9 provinces, taste all the delicacies in the world, drink all the fine alcohol in the world, practice the fiercest abilities, fight the strongest enemies, and sleep with the most beautiful women. Only then will my life not be in vain. Looking at it now, that was just the desire of a person with nothing to gain everything. Perhaps it was very vulgar, but this was the most primitive, instinctive desire hidden in the hearts of every man. When a spark lit up in a restless heart, it would drive that frail body to conquer, to destroy, to create. The most beautiful woman? Li Qingshan grinned. Originally, he had only said it casually, but the Book of All really seemed to have a most. The beauty on the list of beauties was, as expected, the one at the top of the list was the beauty in snow-white clothes, the female eagle that overlooked thousands of mountains. Although the portrait on the wall could not express 1% of her charm, it once again evoked Li Qingshan's memories of the past. He praised sincerely, "Hey, what a beauty!" Little and withdrew his consciousness from the jade slip and raised his head. "What beauty?" Nothing? Li Qingshan put away the jade scroll. Since he had seen the first one, he was sure that there were no major changes to his goal for the time being, so there was no need to look at the rest. Humph. Little and turned his head away. You've even learned to get angry. Li Qingshan smiled as he pinched her nose. Little and shook her head and struggled in his arms, but her face was full of smiles. Li Qingshan hugged her tightly and pinched her nose. My Little and will also be a great beauty in the future. Really? Little and said with a heavy nasal voice. Didn't you hear what that damned old woman said? Heavenly fragrance and beauty? I guarantee it's true. I think even that Gu girl can't compare to her. Gu girl? Gu Yening. Li Qingshan was surprised. You know her? Little and nodded gently. Li Qingshan propped up his cheek. But to be honest, Xianyue isn't bad either. Forget it. Children won't understand what you're saying. Little and made a face and stuck out her tongue. Li Qingshan soaked comfortably in the hot water for an entire night. He felt 10 times more comfortable than lying in bed. To him, water had already become as close as a friend. As such, he practiced the second layer of the Gui water method of condensing qi. He entered a meditative state with the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression first before slowly absorbing the spiritual qi of the world and circulating it according to the mental cultivation method of the Gui water method of condensing qi. The true qi in his body was converted into Gui water true qi strand by strand. When the sun rose, Li Qingshan had already reached the second layer of the Gui water method of condensing qi. He only needed to convert the first few layers, using the Gui water method of condensing qi to cover up the innate method of practicing qi, so it did not take a very long time. However, as soon as the sun rose, Li Qingshan could no longer sit still. He leapt out of the bath, put on his clothes and carried the bamboo basket on his back. He took Little Anne with him and went straight to the bookstore. The old man was still the same old man from yesterday. He lay on the rocking chair leisurely, reading the book from yesterday. When he saw Li Qingshan enter, he seemed to be surprised and leapt up. Is there anything else you need, sir? Li Qingshan cut to the chase. Uncle, the book you gave me yesterday. What book? Why don't I remember? The old man's expression became unnatural again. Li Qingshan squinted his eyes and said slowly, I used various methods and comprehended it for quite a while, but I couldn't get to the bottom of it. That's why I've come to ask for your guidance. Don't tell me you're messing with me. He did not speak as politely as before now. The old man coughed gently. I think I remember it again. Then, what do you think? Li Qingshan said, the erotic drawings are passable, but the writing is bullshit. The old man smiled bitterly. If that's the case, then just pretend you don't have it. Junior brother, oh junior brother, don't blame me for not helping you. Originally, I thought he was a crude person, so he might not be able to tell that the book was bullshit. In other words, you really are messing with me. Li Qingshan thought about the effort he had expended, and his expression became worse and worse. The old man laughed. Fellow Daoist, this old man has something to give you, but I forgot to give it to you yesterday. It can't be this kind of trash again. Li Qingshan abruptly stopped mid-sentence. What the old man shoved into his hands was actually the cultivation method for the arts of the boundless ocean. He hesitated for a moment. Uncle, this item is a bit too valuable. I didn't come here to swindle you. The old man raised his hand and shook his head with a smile. In this market square, who can swindle me? Aren't they afraid of the school of miscellaneous street patrol? I really did want to give you this book yesterday. Those 2 books made me quite a bit of profit. No matter how valuable a book is, if no one reads it, it's all trash. His withered hand patted the A-flower's sleep. If a book isn't read because it's written too badly, then that's nothing. But if a book is clearly written extremely well, but because the standards of the people in the world aren't high enough, it would fall to this state, like a pearl covered in dust, or a beauty lost. Isn't that too much of a pity? Li Qingshan was also slightly moved. Uncle, you really are a book lover. The arts of the boundless ocean was definitely not a bad cultivation method. It was just that it had too high of a reader, which caused the number of readers to dwindle. The old man continued, When I look at you, I feel that perhaps one day, you will be able to find the second half of this book and let this extraordinary and refined cultivation method once again appear in front of the people of the world. If you don't mind, when the time comes, you can show me the second half of the book. I'll be satisfied. Li Qingshan accepted the jade slip and proudly cupped his hands. Uncle, if I'm lucky in the future, I'll definitely return the entire arts of the boundless ocean to you. The old man happily said, then this old man will definitely live for a few more years and wait for you. P.S. Alright, I'll call it a day in August. Plus, I'll have my dreams fulfilled. I feel like next month will be even more exciting. Chapter 222. Back at the arms shop, Sun Fubai was actually quite surprised. Normally, when a person obtained a rare technique, it would be extremely precious. Even if it was his wife, children, or close friends, they wouldn't be allowed to see it. What Li Qingshan obtained was only a remnant of a scroll that was worth 100 or so spirit stones, and the value of the entire scroll was at least 10 times that. Such generosity and lofty sentiments really made him sigh in amazement. This was because Li Qingshan had his eyes set on the 9 heavens. No matter how precious a technique was, it was just a process to him. Once he took this step, who knew how long the road ahead of him was waiting for him? One's vision determined one's breadth of mind. In the bookstore, Li Qingshan chatted with the old man for a while. He found out that the old man's name was Sun Fubai. Sun Fubai was knowledgeable and experienced. After the conversation, Li Qingshan also felt that he had benefited a lot. As they chatted excitedly, Sun Fubai gave Li Qingshan a few more books. They were all bound paper books. The paper had already turned slightly yellow, and the edges were even curled up. Li Qingshan hesitated for a moment. Sun Fubai smiled and said, "Don't worry, these aren't those kinds of books. These are my favorite historical books." Li Qingshan relaxed and casually flipped open the book. In the blank corners of the book, there were many notes written in red. It was obvious that these were the books that Sun Fubai usually read. For a book lover to give away the books that he usually read, it was really a great gesture. He said respectfully, "Thank you, uncle, for your generous gift." Sun Fubai said, "The youngsters these days only think about the secret techniques that can make them stronger overnight. How would they know the true essence of the books? I can see that you are brave and valiant, you have a heroic spirit, and you are quite talented as a chi practitioner. In the future, you will definitely be able to stand out in the cultivation world. However, if you don't understand the ways of the world, no matter how strong you are, you will still be a boorish man who is controlled by others. You can read these books carefully, they will definitely be of great benefit to you." Li Qingshan said, "I've heard people say that reading history can make you wise, and martial arts and secret manuals can only make people stronger, but real books can make cowards brave and stupid people smart. This kind of effect is something that no cultivation method can compare to. This kind of power is true power." Sun Fubai was very pleased. "It's good that you understand this." At the center of the market was a lone 3-story building that was not adjacent to any other shops. Although it was a relatively tall building in the entire market, the building was still very inconspicuous. The vermilion paint on the upper floor was peeling, making it look extremely old. Each bead hanging at the door was a precious jewel worth thousands of gold in the mortal world. It was a bit of a waste to use it as a door curtain. Moreover, because no one took care of it, its color had already turned yellow and dull. Only the 3 gilded words, "Sundry Goods Store," on the black signboard were still shining brightly. There were countless general goods stores in the world, so it wasn't all that strange for a large city to have several dozen general goods stores. However, there was only this one store that could be opened in this market where cultivators traded. Moreover, in this market, there definitely wouldn't be a second general goods store that existed. The moment Li Qingshan lifted the curtain and entered, he felt as if he had entered another world. In front of him was an inconceivably wide hall. The marble floor was smooth and shiny, and the noise on the street was completely blocked out by the curtain. There were a few elegant women dressed in palace attire sitting at a tea table in the hall, chatting softly with each other. If one raised their voice even slightly, it would create an echo effect in the hall. It was also a space expansion technique, but it was more than 10 times better here than in the inn. When the women in palace attire saw Li Qingshan, they exchanged glances and made excuses, seemingly unwilling. In the end, a beautiful woman helplessly stood up and dragged her palace attire over to greet him. "What does fellow Daoist want to buy?" Her face was lightly powdered. Although her smile was bright, it could be seen at a glance that she had been trained. Moreover, it was difficult to conceal the unwillingness on her face. This woman in palace attire was actually a third-layer Qi practitioner. It was admittedly ingenious to use puppets as waiters in the 100 Flavors building, but it was even more impressive to have a Qi practitioner act as hostess. It was indeed worthy of being the center of the market, the headquarters of the School of Miscellany. Li Qingshan learnt quite a lot about the market from Sun Fubai. The name of the market was the Town of Flowing Clouds. It was not fixed to a single location. Instead, it constantly moved between a few locations with relatively more Qi practitioners. It was like a market for mortals, but they would stay for much longer. The reason why the market was located below the Green Vine Mountain this time was because the herb-gathering ceremony of the Three Mountains was approaching. It had attracted many Qi practitioners who were prepared to explore the underground. Before the grand ceremony, talismans and spiritual tools that could increase one's strength were already selling like hotcakes. After the grand ceremony, Qi warriors would bring out all kinds of minerals and spiritual plants from the underground world, which would bring a new wave of sales. All of this was managed by the School of Miscellany of the Academy. They were responsible for the safety of all the Qi practitioners in the market, as well as maintaining normal transactions. Otherwise, why would high-level Qi practitioners negotiate with low-level Qi practitioners? It would be much faster to just kill them and search for their corpses. Although the Qi practitioners in the tea houses and restaurants did not belong to the School of Miscellany, they all needed to pay a sum of spiritual stones to the School of Miscellany every year. Only then could they operate here. When Li Qingshan asked where he could go to buy spiritual artifacts, Sun Fubai immediately recommended the store of miscellaneous goods. Although it was slightly more expensive than the stalls, the quality was relatively guaranteed. Li Qingshan did not lack spiritual stones, nor did he have a discerning eye, so this was obviously the most suitable place. Li Qingshan said, "I want to buy a weapon." The women in the tea houses giggled softly. "What weapon? Can't you just call it a spiritual artifact? You can tell with a single glance that you're a country bumpkin who's just emerged from the Jianghu. Don't tell me you've come to buy inferior spiritual artifacts. Ru Ping's going to make a fortune this time." Although she had suppressed her voice, Li Qingshan still heard everything clearly. As it turned out, this woman was called Ru Ping. That sure was familiar. As it turned out, these female cultivators were not just responsible for welcoming guests. They were also responsible for sales. It was no wonder they were so snobbish. "Please follow me." Although Lu Ruping couldn't hear what her companions were saying, she knew they were laughing at her, so she said coldly. Lu Ruping swayed her hips and climbed the stairs. Her swaying buttocks made Li Qingshan involuntarily think of the innkeeper from last night. He wondered if this was one of the female cultivators he'd introduced to accompany him to bed. He turned around and looked towards the main hall. Perhaps all of them are here. A Daoist wearing an azure robe walked through the door. Both his Daoist robe and the ancient sword on his back shone with spiritual light. In the world of Qi practitioners, this was the appearance of a rich person. The women in palace robes almost all went up to welcome him. One of them with a sweet appearance said loudly, "It's my turn." Only in the end did she go up. Like a victorious hen, she arrived before the Daoist. Her smile was much more sincere. Although it was impossible for him to have someone accompany him to bed no matter what because of little Anne's presence, he could not help but rejoice. Fortunately, he did not ask for one, or it would be far too unfair to him. He was still a virgin after all, so how could he allow himself to be ruined in the hands of a woman like that? Arriving before a room on the second floor, his gaze was immediately drawn away by a signboard. To no surprise, the words, "Arsenal of Arms," were written on the signboard. Back in Xinjiang City, hadn't he bought the tyrant spear from the Arsenal of Arms? He had never thought he would actually see a branch in the city of cultivators. However, most qi practitioners did not care about the gold and silver of the mortal world. Was there a need for a shop that sold spiritual artifacts to sell weapons in a remote, small city? The fact that they could open a store of miscellaneous goods in the school of miscellany demonstrated their strength. Lu Ruping introduced with a professional smile. The arsenal of arms is renowned in our Clear River Prefecture and even the entire Rui Commandery. All the weapons here have been tested by masters, so they're definitely of the best quality, unlike those small stalls outside where the quality varies. They say they're low-grade spiritual artifacts, but they'll crack after a few clashes with others. Then I'd like to take a look. As soon as Li Qingshan set foot in the store, his heart shivered. All of his hairs stood on end. He felt like an army that had fallen into an ambush. Vicious killing intent swept over him. He took a step out instinctively, and all of his bones crackled. His aura rose up abruptly, like the will of an army with a commander at the very front, ready to kill his way out of the encirclement. However, Li Qingshan immediately saw that there were no ambushes in the surroundings. There were only thousands of weapons arranged neatly on the weapon racks, stretching as far as the eye could see. A rough-looking, middle-aged man stood in the center of the weapon racks, staring at him in shock. "Sir, what's wrong?" Lu Ruping took 3 steps away from Li Qingshan and looked at him carefully. Just now, in that single moment, this man with a peculiar figure who gave off an extremely honest and gentle feeling had suddenly turned into some sort of vicious beast, ready to pick a person to devour. For the first time, she felt that perhaps this man was not as simple as he seemed. Only then did Li Qingshan realize the origins of the sharp killing intent. It came from these weapons. He erased his aura and asked in confusion, "Didn't you sense it?" Lu Ruping was stunned. "Sense what?" The rough-looking man walked over. It's easy to sense the killing intent from people, but it's not easy to sense the killing intent from weapons. If you haven't gone through a few life-and-death situations and taken several dozen lives, how can you be so sensitive? He clasped his hands at Li Qingshan. "I can tell with a single glance that you're someone who understands weapons. May I ask for your name?" Li Qingshan said, "My surname is Niu. And how should I address you, sir?" "Nice surname, nice surname. You really are as majestic as an ox. My surname is Zhang, so there's no need to be so polite. You can just call me Little Zhang." The woman laughed. "Old Zhang, you're pretending to be young again. Aren't you ashamed?" Little Zhang said, "Cultivators all pursue longevity. I don't have any hope in this life, so why don't you let me talk about it? Isn't that right, Sister Ping?" The shopkeepers in charge of the shops here were mostly not young qi practitioners. Their cultivation speed was ultimately not faster than natural aging. There was basically no possibility for them to continue improving, so they chose to live a more leisurely and comfortable life. Lu Ruping spat. "Who's your Sister Ping? Don't talk nonsense. I've brought you a guest. Hurry up and help him choose a weapon." Just as Li Qingshan was about to speak, Little Zhang raised his hand. "Don't be in a hurry. Let me guess, what weapon do you want? P.S. I'm in Sanya right now. I'm out to play, but staying alone in an apartment for a day, writing 8,000 words while eating instant noodles at noon, then going to an internet cafe to post chapters. What kind of mental illness is this? I'm begging for guaranteed monthly votes. With your support, the moral emperor won't die." Chapter 223. Long whale water-sucking knife. Li Qingshan smiled and said, "All right, then go ahead and guess. Judging from fellow Daoist physique, the weapon you've chosen is definitely not an ordinary one. Rather, it's a heavy weapon suitable for close combat that body refiners use. I wonder if my guess is correct?" Li Qingshan's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, "Yes. Little Zhang, your eyesight is not bad." As his strength grew, his requirements for weapons would also become higher and higher. The wind-entwining knife was already completely inadequate, and he hadn't reached the 6th layer of qi refining yet, so he couldn't wield a mid-grade spirit weapon. Moreover, even if he reached the 6th layer of qi refining, he might not necessarily use a small sword or a small knife as his main weapon. This was because at that time, his physique would definitely reach a new peak. Using a wind-entwining knife to directly chop someone would be much more efficient than riding a sword. Therefore, his requirements for weapons were not ordinary. Little Zhang saw through his needs at a glance and knew that he wanted a heavy weapon. This also meant that they had such a weapon here. How could he not be happy? When little Zhang heard that Li Qingshan was willing to call him that, he also beamed with joy. He lightly waved his hand, and a series of mechanical sounds rang out in the room. The weapon racks actually slid rapidly, changed positions, and suddenly stopped. A weapon rack slid in front of Li Qingshan. Sure enough, it was filled with huge swords and axes. Li Qingshan casually picked up a great spear and weighed it in his hand. He asked, "Don't tell me there aren't any mid-grade spirit weapons here?" However, all of them were low-grade spirit weapons. Little Zhang smiled and said, "Of course there are." Ordinary qi refiners couldn't afford mid-grade spirit weapons, so they usually only brought people to see low-grade spirit weapons. With a clap of his hands, another weapon rack slid in front of Li Qingshan. The spiritual light of the spirit weapons on it was even denser. If you hadn't come here, it would really be difficult for you to buy a mid-grade spirit weapon for close combat. Lu Rupiang's eyes immediately lit up. Under her guidance, she would also get a share of the profits. Of course, she hoped that Li Qingshan would buy more and more expensive things. That was why when Li Qingshan first came in, she wasn't too willing to entertain him and wanted to switch places with her companions. This was because Li Qingshan's attire, even in the mortal world, didn't look like a rich person. In the world of cultivators, he was the standard poor ghost. From top to bottom, there was not a single thing that shone with spiritual light. At this moment he thought to himself, "You really can't judge a book by its cover." The smile on his face instantly became more sincere. Li Qingshan looked at the middle-grade spiritual weapons with a satisfied look on his face. "Look at this broken gold sword. It's made of pure gold and weighs 210 kilograms. It can use the golden crescent slash. It's supposed to be a two-handed sword, but I can see that you can use it with just one hand. Not only is it powerful, but it's also agile. Isn't it beautiful?" Little Zhang said as he patted the huge golden sword. Li Qingshan asked, "How much?" "I'll only sell it for 75 spiritual stones." As a result, Li Qingshan gained an estimate of the price of a middle-grade spiritual weapon. If he used the standard of exchange with the contribution of the Hawkwolf Guard, it would be around the same price. However, he shook his head. "I'm not too good with swords." Lu Rupiang chimed in, "Look at how beautiful this sword is. If you carry it on your back, you'll definitely look extraordinary." Little Zhang shot a glance at her. Choosing a weapon for a man is even more important than choosing a wife. Women don't butt in. He could tell that Li Qingshan was someone who truly killed people with a weapon. He was not some young master from a sect or clan who could be fooled by a single word of extraordinary. Lu Rupiang curled her lip. Sure enough, she shut up tactfully. "If you're so capable, then sell it yourself. It's just a middle-grade spiritual weapon. I don't even want to waste my breath on it." Little Zhang introduced a few more weapons. None of them weighed less than 100 kilograms. Li Qingshan was very tempted. If he could wield a heavy weapon like that in battle, he could probably pierce through any protective true qi. However, after quite a while of consideration, he suddenly asked, "Do you have any high-grade spiritual artifacts?" Little Zhang was slightly surprised. "Sir, I do have a few high-grade spiritual artifacts here, but they're all treasures of the shop. They'll cost several hundred spiritual stones at the very least, with some going for over 1,000. Normally, I don't show them to regular qi practitioners unless they're truly interested in buying them." Li Qingshan smiled. "If I don't show them to you, who'll buy them? Do you think I'm not sincere?" Lu Rupiang's gaze towards Li Qingshan immediately softened. A single high-grade spiritual artifact was equivalent to 10 mid-grade spiritual artifacts. It was a rare business deal. Little Zhang studied Li Qingshan and smiled. "Fair enough. Please come with me, sir." The three of them came to an extremely tightly sealed secret room. Little Zhang took out an item from his 100 treasures pouch. "Sir, please take a look." This item was not made of metal, wood, or stone. It was azure blue in color, like ice. It was carved into the shape of a whale, and there was a spiritual light on it. It was indeed a high-grade spiritual artifact. Among high-grade spiritual artifacts, there are even fewer suitable for close combat. There's only one, and it's worth 852 spiritual stones. Li Qingshan had never seen such a strange weapon before. Hearing the price, his heart sank slightly. A high-grade spiritual artifact was actually this expensive. He only had a little over 300 spiritual stones left on him, and he could only buy a third of it. Moreover, he still had to save some to buy pill cauldrons and pill recipes, so he immediately ran out of money. His expression did not change. How do I use this? Little Zhang saw that Li Qingshan really wanted to buy it, so he couldn't help but become even more enthusiastic. He exchanged glances with Lu Ruping. This time, he had met a rich customer. This item is called Whale's Ingestion of Water. You can use it however you like. Let me demonstrate it for you. As he spoke, he took out a large water jar from his 100 treasures pouch. The jar was filled with water. Little Zhang placed the whale's ingestion of water into the jar. The blue whale immediately opened its mouth, and in an instant, it sucked all the water in the jar clean. Watch carefully, sir. He raised his hand, and the whale's mouth spat out the water again. It condensed into the shape of a water blade, and suddenly froze, forming an ice blade. The whale's body became the blade's handle, and cold air filled the secret room. Lu Ruping couldn't help but shiver and said, "How magical!" Although Li Qingshan knew that she was acting, he couldn't help but nod in agreement. Not only had he never seen a weapon like this, he hadn't even thought about it. Now, this is the whale's ingestion of water blade, Little Zhang said, and waved his hand again. The ice blade melted into water, forming an ice sword again. This is the whale's ingestion of water blade. No matter what weapon you want, whether it's light or heavy, it's all up to you. What do you think? Alright. Li Qingshan nodded. Normal weapons were all made of metal, and it was rare to see a pure water element weapon. If he used Gui Water True Qi to control it, it would definitely have a good effect. This was practically a weapon tailor-made for him. If a man really chose a weapon like choosing a wife, then he could be said to have fallen in love at first sight with the whale's ingestion of water. However, he was also worried. This ice blade is so fragile. Won't it shatter when it collides with metal? Little Zhang said, "Sir, you don't have to worry. The weapon formed by the whale's ingestion of water is comparable to profound ice, and stronger than fine steel. To tell you the truth, the material of the ice blade formed by the whale's ingestion of water is a little weaker than normal high-grade spirit weapons, but it's definitely stronger than middle-grade spirit weapons. As long as it's not shattered in one hit, no matter how many cracks and gaps there are, it can immediately recover. There's no need for an artificer to maintain it." Lu Ruping said, "Then it'll really save a lot of spirit stones and trouble." A simple repair of a high-grade spirit weapon would cost dozens of spirit stones. Little Zhang struck while the iron was hot. And if you infuse it with spirit water, it'll be even more powerful. Since you're willing to buy such a weapon, wouldn't you be willing to buy some spirit water? Li Qingshan's heart stirred. Wouldn't he be guarding an underground ice spring? He raised his hand and flicked the blade with force. A loud clang, like the sound of metal clashing, reverberated in the secret room. Lu Ruping couldn't help but cover her ears. Little Zhang's perlicue shook violently. Only a white mark was left on the blade. He couldn't help but praise, "Sir, you're really strong." Li Qingshan knew he wasn't lying. Not only did he use his full strength in that flick, he also used his true qi. The 100-tempered saber was also shattered, but it only left a white mark on the ice blade. If it was replaced with the ice-congealing water, there was no need to worry about the hardness. He could even hang it on his waist, making it convenient to use at any time. Moreover, he could condense a saber even bigger and longer to display his advantage in strength. He could even condense a mace that weighed more than 1,000 kilograms. With a smash of the mace, any true qi magical protection technique would be like a piece of paper. For a moment, Li Qingshan's mind was filled with the various advantages of the whale's ingestion of water. He really admired the weapon craftsman who made this weapon. Other than that, what other uses does it have? Although Li Qingshan's expression didn't change, little Zhang had seen countless people and could already tell that he really wanted to buy it. That was why he was being so careful. Little Zhang was overjoyed. He immediately opened the secret room and brought Li Qingshan to the training ground that was specially used to demonstrate the functions of the weapon. He pointed at the steel target in the distance. All the ice water was sucked into the belly of the whale. The whale opened its mouth and suddenly shot out countless tiny icicles. In an instant, the steel target was pierced with countless black holes. Whether it was power or momentum, it was even fiercer than the 1,000-mechanism crossbow. Moreover, it had more than 30 rounds of ammunition. It could be used for both close combat and long-range attacks. Li Qingshan already wanted to snatch the whale's ingestion of water and use it himself. Little Zhang looked at Li Qingshan's expression and the smile on his face became wider. The whale's ingestion of water in his hand suddenly flashed and gradually gathered in the mouth of the whale. With a bang, a ball of water shot out and hit the target that was riddled with holes. The target exploded with a loud bang and was blown into pieces. Li Qingshan said in shock, "Gui water godly thunder." Last night he had browsed through the Gui water condensation method and the related spells that came with it. There were mostly defensive, healing, and trapping methods. Gui water true chi wasn't very good at attacking. Among the many spells, Gui water godly thunder was the most powerful and important spell. Little Zhang said confidently, "Fellow Niu, what do you think?" Li Qingshan said, "It's a good item, but can you give me a better discount on the price?" Without waiting for little Zhang to speak, Lu Ruping said, "Fellow Daoist, feel free to ask. Every item in this miscellaneous goods store has a price tag that can be found in the main catalog. Whether it's a spirit stone more or a spirit stone less, it's not allowed. It's to save you a lot of trouble. We definitely don't cheat anyone. P.S. For the remaining 2,000 words, please come earlier tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Although it's outside, I'll do my best to keep the pace of updating from 8 to 6. The time might be messed up, but the updates will be maintained. Please rest assured, everyone." Chapter 224. The price of the Yao Core. Little Zhang said, "Actually, I can tell that fellow Daoist is determined to get this item. If it was a vendor outside, they would definitely take the opportunity to increase the price. With fellow Daoist personality, you would most likely be at a disadvantage." Li Qingshan agreed. Whether it was his previous life or this life, he had no talent in bargaining. He didn't want to take advantage of others, he just didn't want to be cheated. "All right, I'll buy this item." Little Zhang beamed, and Lu Ruping revealed an expression of ecstasy. This time, those little bitches were going to regret their decision. Li Qingshan said, "However, I don't have enough spirit stones." Little Zhang's smile froze. "Fellow Daoist, you really know how to joke." Lu Ruping's expression instantly turned cold. Li Qingshan said, "Other than selling items, does this place also buy items?" Little Zhang said with a bitter expression, "The arsenal of arms does buy some weapons, but the price is definitely cheaper than buying." He didn't believe that Li Qingshan could afford the whale's ingestion of water. Could he even take out a high-grade spirit artifact to trade for it? It was rare for a great practitioner to have a high-grade spirit artifact. No matter how he looked at it, Li Qingshan didn't seem to be one. What a waste of effort! Who knew that Li Qingshan really did have a high-grade spirit artifact and not just one? The comb and needle from the two grannies, as well as the cursive sword calligraphy, had a total of 3. However, he couldn't sell any of them right now. Lu Ruping couldn't help but mock. "Although this is a miscellaneous goods store, we don't buy all sorts of things. There's a pawn shop just downstairs. Fellow Daoist can try his luck there." Li Qingshan asked in return, "How many spirit stones can I pawn the Yao Core for?" Little Zhang was stunned at first, then he exclaimed, "Yao Core? You have a Yao Core?" Lu Ruping frowned. "It's not that easy to get a Yao Core. Don't tell me you mistook it for some jewel?" Li Qingshan then took out the beast core he obtained from General White Fang of Black Rat Mountain from his 100 treasures pouch. I would also like to ask the two of you to appraise this and see if it is a beast core or not. The earthy yellow demon core did not have any particularly bright spiritual light, but it contained the heart and blood of a demon for hundreds of years. Little Zhang and Lu Rupiang spent most of their time in this grocery store. Although their cultivation bases weren't high, their eyesight was top-notch. They could tell at a glance that this was the legendary demonic core. Lu Rupiang couldn't help but extend her hand to touch it, wanting to take a look. However, Li Qingshan had already put the Yao core back into the 100 treasures pouch. Then I'll go ask around at the pawn shop. Lu Rupiang hurriedly pulled on Li Qingshan's sleeve and bowed in apology. I misunderstood you just now. Please be magnanimous and don't offend me. Wait a moment, I'll go invite our head shopkeeper over. She intentionally or unintentionally revealed the snow-white peaks inside her collar. If the head shopkeeper found out that she had chased away a customer who wanted to sell a Yao core, then she wouldn't need to stay here anymore. Moreover, in this period of buying and selling, she could earn spirit stones that she normally wouldn't even earn in a month. She raised her head and looked at Li Qingshan with a pleading expression. That robust figure seemed to be filled with masculine charm. Even if he had any special requests, it wasn't like she couldn't consider it. Li Qingshan glanced at the collar and knew that although 5 buckets of rice couldn't make people bow down, 1 Yao core was enough. Perhaps it could even do more. Little Zhang also said, "Fellow Daoist, you must stay. I already knew that this whale's ingestion of water was prepared for you. Actually, I wanted to give you a discount, but I'll have to wait for the head shopkeeper to come before I can make the decision." Li Qingshan pondered for a moment and realized that he had underestimated the value of this Yao core. He had originally thought that it was roughly worth a high-grade spirit artifact. However, a high-grade spirit artifact clearly wasn't enough to make these two people become like this. Li Qingshan had simply used the spiritual qi contained in the Yao core to estimate its value. However, he didn't know that a Yao core was also a necessity to refine some precious spirit pills. It was a sacred medicine that could increase the true qi and spiritual qi of a certain attribute. The thousands of years of peace between the human race and the demon race had directly caused this kind of resource to become rare. Qi practitioners ventured deep underground not only to harvest spirit herbs, but also to display enough strength. Basically, the demons would choose to escape. However, Qi practitioners would most likely set up formations to trap the demons in their nests. Of course, it wasn't to slay demons for no reason, but precisely for this Yao core. Li Qingshan pondered for a moment, then said, "All right then, I'll wait here for a while." Lu Rupiang swayed her hips and quickly left. Not long after, she brought back a stout old woman. Her true qi had actually reached the 9th layer of qi practitioner. Her face was full of wrinkles, and she didn't have the strange arrogance of a granny, nor did she have the lowly feeling of a procuress. Instead, she had an air of nobility about her as she welcomed everyone with a smile. "I am Shi Pei. Fellow Daoist, are you selling a Yao core?" Li Qingshan said, "That's right." Shi Pei said, "Can you take it out for me to take a look?" Li Qingshan hesitated for a moment, then handed the Yao core to Shi Pei. Since the School of Miscellany could establish such a large market square and do so many businesses, they definitely wouldn't destroy their own reputation for a Yao core. Shi Pei carefully examined it. Lu Rupiang's face was full of nervousness. After a moment, Shi Pei said, "Fellow Daoist, the quality of this earth attribute Yao core is very good." Li Qingshan said, "May I know how much it's worth?" Shi Pei said, "About this, I have a suggestion. Fellow Daoist, listen to it. Before the herb gathering ceremony, there will be an auction in our store. If this Yao core is auctioned, it will definitely fetch a lot more spirit stones. We'll only take half of the profit. Even foundation building cultivators would appear at the School of Miscellany's auction. If they didn't have a few valuable items, wouldn't they be looked down upon? And people who could casually take out a Yao core would definitely be rich. If they could participate in this auction, they would be able to raise the price even more and set off the scene. This was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Li Qingshan said hesitantly, "But I'm still in a hurry to use spirit stones to buy things." He wasn't too willing to give this precious Yao core to someone else. Shi Peipei waved her hand and said to Lu Ruping, "Today, as long as this fellow Daoist's spending doesn't exceed 2,000 spirit stones, feel free to directly get the item for him. If fellow Daoist's Yao core can't be auctioned for this price, then put it on our tab." Lu Ruping bowed gracefully. "Yes, head shopkeeper." Li Qingshan hid his astonishment. The value of this Yao core was truly beyond his expectations. However, he seemed to have thought of something and his expression darkened slightly. Shi Peipei frowned and said, "Is there anything else fellow Daoist isn't satisfied with?" Lu Ruping said, "Little Zhang agreed to give him a discount for this high-grade spirit artifact." Little Zhang rubbed his nose. Shi Peipei asked, "Then we'll round it up and count it as 800 spirit stones for fellow Daoist." Li Qingshan said, "Since that's the case, then we'll do as Senior says." Just now, what he was thinking about wasn't this. Instead, he was thinking that there would probably never be a day where humans and demons could coexist peacefully. He also had a treasure in his body that was worth more than 2,000 spirit stones. A man's wealth was his own ruin. Chapter 225. Sword Chi 9 Astronomy Complete text. Every word is below. Now that they had obtained another important auction item, they would be able to attract even more Chi warriors to the auction. Fellow Daoist, it's best if you save some spirit stones. I'll prepare a VIP seat for you during the auction. There will be many rare treasures. It would be a pity if you miss out on something you like because you're short of money. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. What treasures will there be? Do you have a catalog? Perhaps he would be able to find the second half of the arts of the boundless ocean. Although he knew the chances were slim, he still kept it in mind. Shi Peipei said, "It's not convenient for us to reveal the specifics, but we've advertised some of the extremely rare items. We'll be adding this Yao core soon. You can ask Ruping about these." "Fellow Daoist, feel free to ask me." Lu Ruping smiled faintly, gentle and elegant. Her gaze towards Li Qingshan was even more affectionate. If Li Qingshan hadn't seen her change her expression before, he really would have been fooled by her. Shi Peipei handed a jade lot to Li Qingshan. "Fellow Daoist, remember, this item cannot be lost. We only recognize the lot, not the person. If someone else brings this lot, we'll also give them the spirit stones." Li Qingshan sank his consciousness into the jade lot, and a certificate immediately appeared. "I'll take good care of it." Then he extended his hand towards Little Zhang. Little Zhang quickly placed the whale's ingestion of water into Li Qingshan's palm. A cold aura pierced his body, but it was extremely comfortable. As his true qi flowed into it, he immediately felt a connection with his blood vessels. However, there was a slight delay, as if his blood vessels were clogged with blood clots. Little Zhang said, "If you want to achieve the best effects of a high-grade spirit weapon, you need to spend some time refining it with true qi. Only then will you truly be able to use it as you wish and be invincible." Li Qingshan nodded. He didn't put it into his 100 treasures pouch, but held it in his palm. He played with it casually, sending his true qi into it bit by bit. This sparkling and translucent ice whale was as exquisite as a work of art. No one would have thought that it was a weapon. Shi Peipei took her leave, and Lu Ruping said gently, "Daoist friend, if there is anything else you need, just let me know." Li Qingshan asked casually, "What if I say I want you?" Lu Ruping blushed. "Hey, fellow Daoist, how can you talk nonsense? Besides, what's so good about me? /web/Zhongwen word by word take me." Little Zhang chuckled as he watched from the side. It was obvious that he was already used to such a scene. He was also extremely happy to be able to sell a high-rank spiritual weapon. He teased, "With your spending today, our Ru Ping would not be able to refuse no matter what you want her to do." "Old man Zhang, if you talk nonsense again, I'll tear your mouth apart." Lu Ruping glared at little Zhang, but she didn't seem to be angry at all. When Li Qingshan and Lu Ruping went downstairs, the few women in palace attire who were greeting the guests all heard what happened upstairs and raised their heads at the same time. Lu Ruping held her head high and puffed out her chest. Her expression was very different from her cold attitude when she went upstairs. She intentionally walked very close to Li Qingshan, wishing that she could stick her body to him. The fragrance of her cosmetics made Li Qingshan's nose itch. Although Li Qingshan had heard plenty about women finding sugar daddies throughout his 2 lives, he still could not help but be surprised when he became a sugar daddy like this. A woman could actually achieve something like this. Just how different were they from prostitutes in brothels? The eyes of the women in palace attire were full of envy and jealousy. How could Ru Ping be caught up in such a good thing? If they had gone up to greet him just now, when they looked at Li Qingshan, their gazes were very different. There was reverence in them that could intoxicate any man. Li Qingshan suddenly understood that this was the treatment of the strong. No matter what era or what world, the strong showed their might and the weak relied on them. The strong gained and the weak lost. Only losers would lament the fickleness of human nature, the weak would complain about the cruelty of society, and the strong only needed to grit their teeth and become stronger. After comprehending this point, that slightly uncomfortable feeling completely disappeared. He played with the ice whale with a carefree smile on his face. In Lu Ruping's eyes, she felt that he was even more charismatic. Of course, this was the charisma of an expert. Li Qingshan brought Lu Ruping to the tea table and pulled out a chair for her. Lu Ruping was naturally flattered and smiled in a very reserved manner. After Li Qingshan took a sip of tea, he asked about the auction. Lu Ruping naturally told him everything she knew. She told him all the auction items. Among them, there were all kinds of spiritual herbs, spiritual stones, rare and exotic beasts. There were 7 or 8 high-grade spiritual weapons alone. Lu Ruping also secretly revealed that the ultimate treasure of this auction was a supreme-grade spirit artifact. The starting price was 5,000 spirit stones, and it was estimated that it would sell for more than 10,000 spirit stones. Although Li Qingshan was tempted, he knew that this was not something he could afford. Even if he could afford it, he would not dare to buy it. Those who could take out so many spirit stones were at least Foundation establishment cultivators at the level of the 3 mountain sect leaders. Snatching food from the tiger's mouth was purely seeking death. He would probably be killed the moment he stepped out of the market. Are there no cultivation methods to be auctioned? Lu Ruping shook her head. Li Qingshan lowered his head and sipped his tea, muttering to himself in silence. It made sense. How could he come across such things so easily? Otherwise, wouldn't all of Sun Fubai's years of effort have been fed to the dogs? However, he was not discouraged. The heavens did not disappoint those who persevered. His footsteps would definitely be much broader than Sun Fubai's. Lu Ruping saw that Li Qingshan was disappointed and hurriedly said, "There are no cultivation methods, but there is a piece of calligraphy." Li Qingshan asked casually, "What calligraphy?" Lu Ruping said, "It's called the sword chi calligraphy or something. Apparently, it was left behind by some ancient sword immortal, but in my opinion, it's just a middle-grade spiritual artifact. It's all over the place, so it must be an excuse for the auction. Only an idiot would be tricked into buying it. If you want to use it, of course a high-grade spiritual artifact is the best." Li Qingshan looked at the rippling green water in the cup and saw his expression change slightly. Without raising his head, he said, "Indeed, only an idiot would buy it. But since the sword chi calligraphy is a middle-grade spiritual artifact, what use does it have?" Lu Ruping said disdainfully, "It's just like its name. It can emit a few flashes of sword chi." The tea rippled. Li Qingshan held back his excitement and chatted with Lu Ruping a little more. However, he learned that Lu Ruping's background was very similar to Qian Rongji's. They both came from a small clan that could not be regarded as a clan. Their talent was limited, and they could not use much resources either, so he could not help but sigh and grumble. Li Qingshan said, "It's said that the Hawkwolf Guard doesn't care about identity. Any Qi practitioner can join. Why don't you try it?" Lu Ruping said in surprise, "The Hawkwolf Guard? That's a place where people die every day. And I'm not trying to boast, but I can earn much more than regular Hawkwolf Guards in a single month in this store of miscellaneous goods." Fair enough. Li Qingshan understood that she was completely different from Qian Rongji. She was nowhere near as discerning and vicious as that woman. However, if the world was filled with women like that, then men would no longer need to live. Lu Rupiang could not help but say, "What else do you want to buy? Why don't you cut out a set of good clothes? My eye for clothes is very good. I'll pick out a few for you." Li Qingshan interrupted with a smile, "No, I want to sell a few more things." Lu Rupiang was stunned. In the end, Li Qingshan sold all of the several hundred talismans on him aside from the high-grade and supreme-grade talismans to the store of miscellaneous goods. He earned another several hundred spiritual stones. It was close to the herb-gathering ceremony of the Three Mountains, so the value of talismans was very high. He had sold them all without any qualms. Originally, Li Qingshan wanted to buy a pill cauldron, but he gave up on that for now. He was in no hurry to refine pills right now anyway. If the sword chi diagram really was a part of the cursive sword calligraphy like he had expected, then he had to obtain it. He could not allow it to end up in the hands of others. The cursive sword calligraphy in his possession basically hovered between high grade and supreme grade. If he could find another piece and complete it, then he would be able to obtain a supreme grade spiritual artifact worth over 10,000 spiritual stones. As for the cursive sword calligraphy, its actual value was probably far greater than that. Even Oxen had praised it a little. In the past, he might not have understood what that meant, but he understood very well just how great Oxen's standards were now. Normally, a mid-grade spiritual artifact would not be worth more than 100 spiritual stones. However, he could not treat everyone else as idiots. He could not guarantee that no one would be able to tell what was going on, so he had to ensure that nothing went wrong. He had to gather as many spiritual stones as he could to ensure that he could obtain it. With that, Li Qingshan ignored Lu Rupiang's disappointed gaze. He made his way out of the store of miscellaneous goods and was about to leave the town. As he made his way through the bustling streets, he glanced back at the verdant green vine mountain again. He had no idea whether Yu Zijian would be able to wait for Hua Qinglu or not. Not everyone was worth waiting for, so he chose not to wait for anyone. However, he also hoped that she would be able to wait for the person she wanted to wait for. He arrived at the bookstore with the bamboo basket on his back and bid farewell to Sun Fubai before returning to the inn to check out. He turned around and left the inn, but he suddenly stopped. Yu Zijin stood in the sunlight outside the inn. Her smile was even more resplendent than the sunlight. She held the hand of a girl who seemed to be rather reluctant. She was Hua Qinglu. Li Qingshan smiled in relief. This was the value of human trust, wasn't it? If you could trust others bravely, even if you were deceived 100 times, you would still be able to make true friends. Although the path he walked was a lonely, courageous path, he still admired her bravery and decisiveness. "Niu Juxia, this is Qinglu." Yu Zijian basically dragged Hua Qinglu over to Li Qingshan and introduced her to him excitedly. Hua Qinglu remained as cute as ever. She clasped her hands at Li Qingshan in a graceful manner and said, "I never thought the people of the Green Vine Mountain would be so bold. Thank you for taking care of Zijian during this period of time." Fei Li looked at Li Qingshan's tall figure and wondered inside. He had no idea how Zijian knew such a strange person. Chapter 226. Li Qingshan said, "That's no problem. Zijian, since your friend has already come, I don't have to worry anymore. I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave first. I'll tell your father that you're already safe and sound." "That's right." Before the two of them could reply, Li Qingshan strode off, vanishing into the crowd in the blink of an eye. Hua Qinglu was young, but she was much more meticulous than Yu Zijian. If he came into too much contact with her, she would probably see through his disguise. Hua Qinglu muttered, "Zijian, that guy is so rude. Is he really helping you out of kindness? Though, his back seems a little familiar." "That's because Niu Juxia is very friendly. Why would he have any ill intentions?" Yu Zijian defended Li Qingshan in a hurry. Hua Qinglu shook her head. "You're young and ignorant. Be careful, or you'll end up being sold off. You'll still have to worry about it. You're the one who's young and ignorant. Niu Juxia is a good person, so why would he harm me?" Yu Zijian widened her eyes. "Forget it. I can't persuade you otherwise. Hua Qinglu turned around and left. Yu Zijin asked in a hurry, "Oi, where are you going?" Hua Qinglu raised her chin and pointed at a nearby mountain. The Green Vine Mountain, obviously. Li Qingshan returned to the Proud Sword Manor. Yu Shuquang was no longer there, having gone out to collect food and drink. Li Qingshan thought about how Yu Zijin would return very soon anyway, so he did not take it to heart. He ventured deep underground from the manor outside the city. He was as familiar with this area as he was with his own back garden. He knew every single demon here. Now that he had transformed into his true demon form, he didn't have to worry about any demon being blind enough to attack him. Instead, there were quite a few who were tactful enough to come out and greet him. "Leader, you're back." Li Qingshan nodded slightly sternly, maintaining his dignity as a leader. However, he thought inside, many of these guys are about to lose their lives to the demon cores in their bodies. Whose fault is that? If he was still a human, he probably wouldn't even consider such a problem. He would kill demons and hunt for demon cores as a matter of course. But when his body turned into a demon, he received the demon's help and became the demon's friend and leader. His thoughts also gradually changed. Passing through the deep and serene cave, they walked for an unknown period of time. A blue light flickered in the endless darkness, like the only bright star in the pitch-black night sky. Li Qingshan was like a wanderer who had finally returned home. A look of relief appeared on his face as he quickened his pace. Before he even entered the cave, he heard a heaven-shaking snoring sound. Li Qingshan shook his head. "You bastard, I've really seen through you. There was no need to hibernate, just like there was no need to be a vegetarian." However, he still maintained his primitive instincts. Probably because he didn't sense any danger, Millipede turned over on the stone platform and didn't get up. "Sleep a little longer if you can." Li Qingshan didn't wake him up. He sat on the edge of the stone platform, his back pressed against the cold stone. Feeling the ripples of spiritual light, he slowly entered a meditative state. Little and took out the Book of All and read it carefully. No matter how rich the information in the book was, it still couldn't compare to the reaction of the human mind. The Book of All. In the darkness, the blue butterfly flapped its wings 1,000,000 times, and a month quietly slipped away. Suddenly, a howling gust of wind swept through the quiet cave. The butterfly fluttered, and the sea of flowers swayed. At the end of the gust, Li Qingshan took a deep breath and stood up. Looking inwardly at his body, he revealed a satisfied smile. He had already converted all the true qi in his body into Gui water true qi. At the same time, he had opened a meridian and reached the 4th layer of qi refining. His true qi was unprecedentedly strong. He took out the cursive sword calligraphy and infused it with true qi. Sword qi shot out, silently piercing the stone wall. A blue butterfly fluttered in the air for a moment, then suddenly split into two. This kind of power would be able to instantly kill a 6th or 7th layer qi practitioner. Even a 9th layer qi practitioner would be in great danger. If he could really restore the cursive sword calligraphy to its original state, he looked forward to seeing just how strong it would be. Calculating the time, it was about time to attend the auction. Little and had already taken the initiative to stand in the bamboo basket. Li Qingshan said, "You stay here this time. It's quite troublesome for me to carry a big bamboo basket all the time, mainly because it's too eye-catching." Which qi practitioner didn't have 100 treasures pouch? He just had to carry a big bamboo basket. Whether it was in the bookstore or Lu Ruping, he had asked about it indirectly. Although it was mostly out of curiosity, it was hard to guarantee that someone with observant eyes would notice anything. He promised, "If there's anything good to eat or drink, I'll definitely bring it back for you." "You think I'm annoying?" Little and pouted. "That's not what I meant. You are. Be good." "No." Li Qingshan glared, then let out a breath. Calm down, communicate, communicate." He crouched down. "Then why don't you want it?" "I don't want to be separated from you." Little and lowered her eyes. Li Qingshan said, "Just for a little while." "Not even for a little while." "Then I don't care." Li Qingshan strode out of the cave, startling a flock of butterflies. After a few steps, he turned back and saw that she was still standing in the bamboo basket, not crying or making a fuss. She only looked straight at him, as if waiting for him to take her. He hardened his heart. I really don't care. When he reached the cave entrance, he couldn't help but turn back. However, her expression and posture hadn't changed in the slightest. If he really left like this, she could keep waiting for him like this. He sighed helplessly. Come with me. Together with the bamboo basket, they flew up and landed in Li Qingshan's hands. Little and had a triumphant smile on her face. Li Qingshan pinched her soft cheeks. I knew I couldn't be polite to you. Little and said, if I'm not by your side, I can't protect you. Li Qingshan was suddenly speechless. Holy Church, leader, please save some for me. A frog was so anxious that it jumped and spoke human language. Don't talk nonsense, or I'll roast you and eat you. Li Qingshan held the whale's ingestion of water and put it into the mouth of the ice-condensed water spring. He swallowed to his heart's content. Now he had already absorbed 3 large vats of water, but it still didn't feel full. Although the frog was very anxious, it couldn't do anything. Only when the whale was full of water did Li Qingshan take it out with satisfaction. He took out a pearl dew pill and threw it to the frog. Here, this is for you. He wouldn't really look down on it. This frog was one of the strongest demon soldiers under him. If other chi practitioners dared to take the spring water, even if they didn't die in its hands, they wouldn't be able to bring back even a drop of spring water. The frog coiled up like a snake and swallowed the pearl dew pill. Croak, thank you, leader. Although the spirit water was full of spirituality, it still couldn't compare to the high-quality medicinal pills made by humans. You stay here and don't forget the gathering. Li Qingshan said again and walked back into the cave. Croak, croak, I won't forget. The frog croaked and jumped into the ice-condensed water. Li Qingshan strode through the cave. He shook the crystal whale in his hand, and with a clang, it spat out a huge blade. It even condensed a beautiful crystal handguard. It was the perfect weapon that could unleash Li Qingshan's advantage in strength. It was suitable for the length and size of his swing, and it was extremely heavy as well. It weighed over 500 kilograms. Even Li Qingshan could not use it with a single hand. Recently, he had constantly poured Gui water true qi into the whale's ingestion of water. His aura had already completely linked up, without any sluggishness anymore. It was like it had truly become an extension of his body. When he condensed the blade, he no longer needed to spit out water first and then condense it slowly. Instead, he could condense it instantly. However, the 4th layer Gui water true qi was still slightly insufficient to unleash the power of a high-grade spiritual artifact. Li Qingshan arrived in the proud sword manner. Yu Shuquang had already returned, handing a full 100 treasures pouch to Li Qingshan. He wanted to say something, but he hesitated. Li Qingshan checked the 100 treasures pouch and smiled in satisfaction. Then he asked, Why don't I see your daughter? Yu Shuquang said in surprise, Didn't she go to the Green Vine Mountain? How did she return? Li Qingshan frowned. In other words, she still hasn't returned? Was the Green Vine Elder really not going to give face to the Hua family? Yu Shuquang said, It's not like she hasn't returned. Have you seen her? As a result, Li Qingshan told him about his meeting with Yu Zijian below the Green Vine Mountain. Yu Shuquang sighed. Thank you for your efforts. As long as she hasn't been bullied, I don't have to worry as a father. As for whether she goes to the 100 schools of thought or the Green Vine Mountain, that's probably not something we can control anymore. Li Qingshan said, I'll be going to the Green Vine Mountain again very soon to see what has happened. Just wait here for my news. He passed another empty 100 treasures pouch to Yu Shuquang. We still need to gather food, but there's no need to be in such a hurry. Just keep an eye out and be careful not to alarm too many people. The underground demons had an endless demand for food on the surface. It was also a great method for him to control his subordinates as the leader of the demon soldiers. He obviously needed someone to help him with this. Yu Shuquang said, That's easy. The Proud Sword Manor has already bought over a dozen large restaurants and controlled a few large grain merchants. It'll be much easier for us to do this in the future. Li Qingshan smiled. How thoughtful of you. He had not spent so much effort on Yu Shuquang for nothing. He just happened to be in need of a subordinate who could draw inferences. He did not have the time or energy to establish his own network in the human world, but Yu Shuquang did. Otherwise, he would never have been able to establish such a large proud sword manor. He passed all the silver notes on him to him. Go ahead with this. You don't have to worry about the silver. In the future, you definitely won't just be leading people of the Jianghu. Yu Shuquang's heart skipped a beat. He smiled. If I'm not a person of the Jianghu, am I supposed to be a qi practitioner? With my talent, how am I supposed to be able to do that? I've reached the innate realm quite late too. It'll be impressive if I can reach the second layer. Li Qingshan's face sank. If you're satisfied with the second layer, then ignore what I said. Second layer qi practitioners were existences at the very bottom among qi practitioners. Not only would a subordinate like that not be able to help him out much, but he would probably have to constantly deal with problems for him. It would be pointless then. Yu Shuquang looked into Li Qingshan's eyes. His pitch-black eyes seemed to burn with flames. The ambition and confidence hidden within them made Yu Shuquang's heart shiver slightly. Before this person, there was no need for him to feign modesty. It was the exact opposite. He needed to demonstrate sufficient ambition and confidence. Only then could he catch his eye, and this just happened to be what he was good at. I've heard that if you practice qi and practice qi again, you can break through a certain barrier and step into the world of immortals. I want to try. Only then did Li Qingshan smile. He placed a pill of spring breeze and rain into Yu Shuquang's hand. That realm is called Foundation Establishment. It means that everything has just begun. There was a hubbub of voices in the town. Streams of people mingled and brushed past one another. Qi practitioners that regular people would rarely see were everywhere. Everyone's faces were filled with anticipation and nervousness. The herb-gathering ceremony of the 3 mountains that happened once every 10 years was about to begin. It was set to be in 3 days' time. The great adventure of the underground world was about to begin. It was filled with opportunity and danger. Some people would strike it rich overnight, while others would die nameless. Everyone hoped that they were the former, while they hoped that everyone else was the latter. They had made sufficient preparations for this. Their gazes towards one another had already become extremely cold. The tranquil tea house that was usually extremely quiet was actually filled with guests. Lu Ziyu, who brewed tea, was basically so busy that he could barely move. Qi practitioners of the 6th layer and above had already become a common sight. Only they could afford to drink such a luxurious item. The situation was basically the same for the other stores. Business was extremely good. However, only the store of miscellaneous goods remained completely deserted. When people surged over there, they would be pushed away by an invisible barrier, unable to approach it at all. Unless they held an invitation, only great qi practitioners at the 6th layer or above could directly step through the formation and enter the building under the envious and admiring gazes of the crowd. Li Qingshan had arrived extremely early. He was already seated in the VIP seats, quietly waiting for the auction to begin. Looking outside, every single compartment was shrouded in a layer of smoke, blocking any probing gazes. At this moment, Lu Ruping walked in with a smile. Li Qingshan immediately said, "You can leave. I don't need your service." Lu Ruping's smile stiffened, but she saw how determined Li Qingshan was, so she could only leave. She thought, if you're heartless, then don't blame me for being heartless. The bamboo basket opened up slightly, revealing little Anne's clear, crystalline eyes. "Did you not let me come because you wanted to, Pa?" Li Qingshan pressed down on the bamboo basket. What does a child know? A gong resounded through the hall. Shi Pei, dressed in a purple silk gown, strode onto the stage. She first bowed in all directions, expressing her gratitude for everyone's presence. Then she introduced herself and announced the start of the auction. One item after another was auctioned. From the initial stack of low-grade spirit talismans to mid-grade spirit artifacts, the value of the items grew higher and higher, and the competition became fiercer. Li Qingshan calmly waited for the only item he wanted, the Sword Qi Scroll, to appear. The next item is the Sword Qi Scroll written by an ancient sword immortal. It can emit sword qi. Although it's only a mid-grade spirit artifact, it contains the supreme Tao of the sword. Moreover, this sword chi scroll should only be a fragment. If someone can find the other fragments and put them together, it won't be as simple as a mid-grade spirit artifact. The bidding starts now. The starting price is 100 spirit stones. As the scroll of calligraphy was unfolded, Li Qingshan's pupils suddenly shrank. Yes, this was it. Although he didn't understand calligraphy, the twists and turns of the strokes contained in it were exactly the same as in the cursive sword calligraphy. After confirming one last time, he looked at Little and was proficient in calligraphy and swordsmanship, so he definitely wouldn't be wrong. As Little and nodded lightly, Li Qingshan smiled. Although the starting price of 80 spirit stones was slightly higher than a regular mid-grade spirit artifact, it was still auctioned as a mid-grade spirit artifact. The 1,000 spirit stones he had prepared should not be a problem. As Shi Pei announced the starting price, there was a brief silence in the hall. 100 spirit stones to buy a mid-grade spirit artifact was really not worth it. Apart from a very small number of people like Li Qingshan, those who could sit in the hall were all experienced and knowledgeable chi practitioners who had participated in countless auctions. They were already very immune to the so-called ancient sword immortals. There were so many ancient cultivators who didn't pass down a few things. Even if this sword chi calligraphy had really shone brilliantly in the past, it was now just a mere mid-grade spirit artifact. No one dared to hope that they could find the other parts of it. Even if they found them, how could they piece them together? This item was similar to the arts of the boundless ocean. It seemed to have great potential value, but this value was really too uncertain. Most chi practitioners pursued practicality. Li Qingshan smiled slightly. Just as he was about to make his first bid, he suddenly heard an indistinct voice from a seat not far away, 200 spirit stones. The moment he made his bid, it was as if he was determined to win, directly dispelling the thoughts of many chi practitioners who wanted to make a casual bid. Shi Pei said, "All right, this fellow Daoist has made a bid of 200 spirit stones. Are there any other fellow Daoists who are willing to make a higher bid?" This sword chi calligraphy had been appraised by her and she believed it to be a rare item. That was why she intentionally set the price a little higher than a normal mid-grade spirit artifact. If a rare item couldn't be sold for its value, then she would rather it not be auctioned and wait for another day. Li Qingshan sighed lightly. As expected, he wasn't the only one who could see the value of this item. He also made a bid, 300 spirit stones. The voice passed through the fog and immediately became distorted and indistinct. It was impossible to tell whether it was a man or a woman. Shi Pei took a deep look at the private room. She believed that it was Li Qingshan's room. A smile appeared on her face. It seemed that this rare item could be sold for its proper value. As expected, after a moment of silence, the guest in the other private room made another bid, 400 spirit stones. He actually directly raised the price to 100 spirit stones. The crowd was silent at first, then became slightly noisy. 400 spirit stones was already enough to buy a slightly inferior high-grade spirit artifact. Why would someone use it to buy a mid-grade spirit artifact? Could it be that this sword chi calligraphy really had some secret? Or was it someone hired by Xianxia to intentionally raise the price? Although there were many people who were tempted, no one dared to risk the spirit stones in their 100 treasures pouches. They could only silently watch the two people bidding. They were slightly surprised that the first round of bidding had already begun before the high-grade spirit artifacts appeared. Li Qingshan frowned and calmly said, 500 spirit stones. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.